directs, produces and stars in The Beast of Trinity, Texas. And this is a Sasquatch creature feature movie with added drama. So what's the story? Terry Weaver plays our sheriff of Trinity, Texas, and he finds a mauled and sort of absolutely mutilated body in the woods of a camper. And, you know, people think it might be a murder, people think it might be some type of maybe bear attack, but the reality is something far more dangerous. And so it follows this investigation with the sheriff, his deputy, his daughter, who is apparently working for a kind of government-sanctioned cryptozoology department. And we meet, you know, the town mayor and a few other people. Along the same time, there seems to be some sort of civil dispute about this bridge that wants to be kind of redeveloped and things like this. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. Now, this is obviously a very low-budget movie, and we have to obviously have expectations in check whilst we're watching a movie like this, as I often say. But what does work, this movie certainly won't be criticised for not having characterisation. This movie spends the vast majority of its time with our characters and giving them backstories, giving them kind of relationship drama and issues and things like this, giving the kind of the context of this kind of civil unrest between protesters and this kind of development that's happening in regards to this kind of bridge and surrounding areas and things like this. So this movie certainly can't be accused of not having characterization, because it absolutely does, and we get a good idea about everyone's kind of point of view, everyone's sort of personal problems. For example, our sheriff seems to be dealing with a level of guilt. He's estranged from his daughter. He has an alcohol abuse problem. You know, he's not sort of seeing this kind of potential relationship with someone who's trying to sort of connect with him. Just to give you his kind of point of view. But even other characters like our deputy, you know, he's being accused of being a little bit of a workaholic and not spending time with the family. So we get a good amount of these kind of character kind of building moments. So the movie plays very much like a drama in many ways. So, you know, there's that. You know, you get the good sense of these characters and what they're all about. We see our creature, and it's a practically realised suit. You know, it's not the greatest suit ever, but I kind of quite like the design. It actually has sort of a somewhat unique sort of face, which is, you know, kind of somewhere between benevolent but also threatening, and I kind of quite liked it. I mean, at times, yeah, I mean, it looks just like a guy in a suit, but, you know, for a low-budget movie, I kind of quite liked it. There is a kind of a couple of shots here that I thought were kind of fairly well directed and everything. For example, we get a couple of like tracking shots where the police are kind of arresting or, you know, searching this butcher's house and his place of work and things like this. We get a couple of kind of like eerie shots where we see like a, you know, the creature's claw in the kind of the misty woods and things like this. So there's a couple of like little elements here where you think, oh, you know, the direction's kind of quite nice here. I think actually on a technical basis, the movie's relatively well sort of put together. And the movie has this kind of police procedural kind of style feel to it. So if you're a fan of like TV police procedurals, like the CSI series and things like that, the movie really follows that kind of template and formula. Really, it's more about the investigation more so than having a creature on the loose ripping people up, because the movie, you know, arguably you could say it's, you know, a creature feature horror film, but it's more of a, as I say, a drama, more of a police procedural than it is anything else. You know, I guess you would call it more of a thriller than a horror, possibly. So, you know, fans of that type of genre, I think, will maybe get on with it. The acting, you know, it's probably more local actors, one would assume. And although I don't think it's brilliant, I never found anyone distractingly awful at the same time. And our kind of, our main character, played by our writer-director, is a very subdued performance. Arguably, you could say, he's doesn't really show a lot of emotion. He's never really, it's maybe one expression, and that might sound like a negative, but I think that was by choice. He's meant to be a man kind of haunted by his past, dealing with alcoholism, estranged from his daughter. So he's not really got this kind of joyous life or anything. So I found his performance to be very sort of subtle, and you could arguably say flat, but I think I could have got where he was going with it. So, again, although I wouldn't necessarily tell you this movie's acting is fantastic, I don't think it was bad at the same time, and I think it was kind of, fine for the kind of the level of this movie that it is, which kind of feels like a cheap TV movie, to be honest. But I don't think it was maybe as bad as maybe some reviews will kind of have you believe, to be honest. Let's talk about what doesn't work. Now, when you watch a movie which claims to be a creature feature, you may be disappointed to hear that this is maybe 1 or 2% about the creature and 98% about people's relationships with one another and the kind of the conspiracy really about what is going on behind this town and its kind of plans and shenanigans going on and things like this. Because that, by far and away, is what this movie is about primarily. In actual fact, I think this movie probably may have worked better had it actually been just a straight drama and kind of really dropped the creature feature Bigfoot aesthetic, because it features so little in the actual story. It almost feels like when we have our scenes involving the Bigfoot, and let me tell you, there isn't many, it almost feels out of place, to be honest. And maybe the movie would have been better suited being a drama, and not having these kind of these creature feature elements. Because I got to say, the way this movie is set up, being called what it is, and the posters and stuff, and just the general idea here, I feel people wanting a straight creature feature will be bitterly disappointed with the kind of the slow drama that this movie actually is. It's also a relatively long movie, running at over 2 hours. So it's a very slow-paced film, and it's more of a procedural. It is more the sheriff investigating the killings, but also the corruption in government and things like that, and that is what this movie is about. Now, it could be an exciting drama, an edge-of-your-seat thriller, but the pacing is so slow, and although I don't think the acting is necessarily bad, I think had this been more of a straight creature feature, you may be a little bit more forgiving with maybe not the best professional acting, but as the movie's concentrating more on the dramatic side of stuff, I feel this is maybe where people may have a problem with the acting, because the movie relies so heavily on drama more so than scares or thrills or blood or guts and spectacle. It is more of a drama, and as such the acting, I think, needs to be that much better to support a film like this. And although like I said, I don't think it's necessarily any horrible acting necessarily, but it isn't the strongest acting that would really need to be there for a more of a kind of a straight drama necessarily. Now, without really kind of going into any specifics here for fear of spoilers, we have a kind of twist. I've got to say, I thought it was a little silly. Considering the movie's somber tone up until the final act, when we have this kind of reveal, I'm thinking, it is proper silly. I guess you would say it's sort of unique, and you probably won't see where it's, what's happening and where it's going, and the twist seemingly, I don't think anyone will kind of guess what it is before you get there. But at the same time, because of it, it's kind of a silly one, and really defies any sort of logic or explanation. It's just like, okay, this seems like a silly, and then it kind of compounds itself by going one step further with, you know, an element involving the daughter. And I'm thinking, man, this movie just keeps getting more bonkers as it kind of goes, you know, comes towards the finale. And then we have these like extended sequences, like we have this AA meeting towards the end of the movie, and it's just like, do we really need this? And I'm thinking, is the director just like exercising his own demons as he has some sort of alcohol problem, and he's trying to kind of like work through this with these kind of scenes in the movie? Because I really didn't feel like it needed to have this like elongated scene and things like this. Like I said, the runtime here is excessive for, I think, a movie like this. And there's just scenes that just seemingly just witter on for absolutely ever. There's characters here where they're really kind of fleshed out, and you could say, yeah, great. It's, you know, it's good for having this character development. But for example, the character of the deputy, we spend a lot of time with him, and I've got to arguably say, if you were to take his character out of the movie, does he genuinely have any impact on the actual story? Would the events of the movie actually work out any different? I would say they won't. So why are we spending so much time with a character who really has little to no impact on the actual plot? So I gotta say, this is one of these films where we have one person behind the camera, and in front of it in this case, without really, you know, much oversight. And I think, and again, I've seen it many times, when you have these one-man band sort of style movies, they often feel self-indulgent, and you needed to have a producer to kind of like pull back these creatives to try and make more of a manageable film, more of a digestible film for audiences. And although I don't think this movie is bad, I have to say, I just think it's somewhat misjudged, and I think there's a better film in here, maybe the better edit or something. But go into this film, don't expect an actual creature feature. If you like procedurals, maybe you'd enjoy this more. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10, a slightly below average movie, without necessarily being a out-and-out bad film, but certainly misjudged, as I say. So 4 out of 10. What were your thoughts? Leave me comments, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.